morning. First, thank you, Franco and Volker, for the invitation. And I was not in Trento 25 years ago, unfortunately, but it is a pleasure to be here with you now. I start. Okay. The third millennium BC saw a series of major changes in European societies. Between 2800 and 2600 BC, a wide range of late Neolithic cultures developed and coexisted with the new Beaker communities, whose emerging social model responded to a different pattern of rationality from the Neolithic. The changes that had begun 200 years earlier among the late Neolithic cultures were capitalized and maximized by the Beaker communities, and the new combination of technologies led to a definitive transformation of society. The trend of the changing social model was facilitated by the development of the network of identities that were gradually woven over almost a millennium, depending on region. The Beaker communities will interact in this varied context. Most of them have their beginnings in much earlier times. So I believe that the continuation in the use of the same spaces does not necessarily imply continuity, being necessary to analyze the context in each case. You must read, because I go to speak another thing in this slide. Identity is a social construct. People need to express their identity. We have the need to be similar or different from other people or communities. Human beings materialize this situation through different forms of behavior. Pottery is one type of element through which identity can be expressed. Not only the finished pot, but also the different phases of the chaîne opératoire can be used for this purpose. We can nuance certain aspects of identity by considering a wide number of objects in the analysis, objects of the so-called Beaker package. Our general hypothesis for this work is Beaker identity crosses all domains of society, either to be denied or to be accepted. The spatial levels of the identity can be expressed from the house and the grave to the continent. And I will start from Galicia, the area I know best, from which I will make a comparison where information is available. The northern and northwestern fringe of the Iberian Peninsula was chosen looking for a contrast of regional styles, which will allow us to offer a broader vision of the expression of identity. We must highlight 4 issues. It is important to understand the archaeological record in this region. The first is the endemic problem. No skeletons are preserved in some of areas in Galicia. There are not skeletons, for example. All excavation and very partial recent excavation of sites is present all time, and we have a lot of difficulties in accessing information. And finally, we cannot refine the chronology for the Beakers as in other regions. Despite this, we can gather interesting information for this presentation. The brief mention to late Neolithic will allow us to better understand why I consider that there is a very strong change with the introduction of the Beaker. If we take a look at the Iberian Peninsula, three large ceramic areas have been identified. We have this area, the Beaker, with peña type pottery, plain pottery, and Bezara Trades pottery. We begin with our region of study. We go to visit the domestic and funerary aspect to understand the context of what is to follow. In Galicia, there are sites in the western half, and in Portugal, the presence of sites is more balanced through the region. We have two main types of settlements. In Galicia, there are non-walled settlements with sunken floors distributed around a hair, located in small valleys. There may be some walled settlement, maybe here, this maybe, but it is not excavated. And in Portugal, there are walled settlements located in high areas that are difficult to access. In addition, there are some exceptional ditched enclosures frequent towards to the south of Portugal. The first question: could this regional difference be due to an identity strategy? This question is important for later. We have two types of burial sites. We know in Galicia the megalithic barrows. We have 18 more or less, and in the north of Portugal we find the same type of burials and cave as well. In the case of burials, it should be noted that there are two forms of tombs. The first, the reuse of megalithics built in the Middle Neolithic is very frequent. The predominant pottery is plain and is deposited whole. Fragments of decorated peña type pottery are recorded sometimes. Exceptionally new burial mounds we built ex novo in the late Neolithic. They are less monumental, respond to an event, and have individualized grave goods. And we find highly decorated ceramics or polished lithic industry. We can see this kind of grave gods or something like this or like this. Sorry. If we look at ceramics from a chain operatoire approach, we can observe two important aspects to be mentioned. The first one allows us to affirm that it continues with the previous Neolithic tradition, with the same chain operatoire for all the vessels, in which the decoration is a novelty that does not affect to the production process in general. It seems that ceramic with more complex decoration are selected for some burials. The great innovation is this part. We think toward the end of the period, the introduction of vessels with a separate chain operatoire, which I call Beaker imitation. I don't know really if a Beaker imitation, but I call like this. A type of vessel that combines manufacturing processes of peña-type ceramic and Beaker ceramics. With up to 3 variants, also they are few in number per site. The Beaker imitation is a pottery only documented in the late Neolithic sites. It is very important for the context where Beaker pottery has never been documented. Its late Neolithic chronology coincides with the beginning of Beaker. These vessels could have been made by Neolithic potters who tried to imitate the Beakers. Imitating a decoration could be more or less easy, but it is really difficult to imitate some steps of chain operatoire if the potter has not been trained in a Beaker community, really. For example, the paste treatment or maybe firing. In some African communities, the treatment of pastes and tempering express group identity. Could this, a question, could this correspond to a person from a Beaker group who lives in a Neolithic community and should be making Neolithic pottery? Or another question, this potter doesn't know how to make Neolithic pottery? Another question, this potter doesn't want to make Neolithic pottery? I don't know. In these vessels, we see an individual hand which must correspond to a social norm. Could there be a strategy of identity concealment behind the manufacture of these pieces? All these vessels have one thing in common. They are more carefully manufactured than the Neolithic productions, and in burials, they are part of individual grave gods. Could these pots express prestige? This imitation could be part of an identity strategy that may have many meanings, maybe status, meaning on the local level within the Neolithic community. This could be a way of accepting the Beaker identity, or in a community identity, a way of express Neolithic versus Beaker. I don't know. Today, the number of Beaker sites has expanded, indicating that the presence of these artifacts is probably even greater than we know. The distribution of these sites is coastal and along some stretches of the Guadiana, Tagus, and Ebro valleys. The main context for the use of these pan-European Beaker are funerary. Why? Are they an element of prestige that is only placed in the tomb? Is it an object that reflects the status of the deceased? Is it an object that represents a foreign identity breaking into a territory that is not their own? Is it a strategy of Beaker communities to appropriate the space of a Neolithic community that they want to dominate? Questions. And European styles, Beaker becomes less representative within a few generations, and new ways of interpreting the Beaker emerge as a result of the changes that continue to take place in region. The new areas do not coincide with the previous ones of the late Neolithic, but new identities are constructed in the areas of greatest concentration of European Beaker in the peninsula. Could this show the strong impact of the first Beaker communities in a large territory? A first look at the regional styles shows that the Galician area is the one that remains most faithful to the original European maritime style, with the predominance of horizontal motif and narrow-banded design, together with the use of the shell as the main decorative tool. Could this be evidence of strong Beaker impact in the region? Moving away from the original Beaker style in other regions could be indicating a desire of identity that rejects its international origins? Or, on contrary, in these regions, is it the previous Neolithic that is rejected? The Neolithic decorative motifs in Northwest Iberia are extremely striking compared to the rest of regions, and just the change in the regional Beaker decoration is reversed, with the more complex and incisive motif moving to the areas where Neolithic ceramics have a simpler decoration or are absent, like the Cienpos Zuelo area. Does this imply a rejection of the Beaker, or is it really a reinforcement of identity against a Neolithic not yet forgotten? For me, the technological change is obvious with Beaker. There are now 3 ways of making pottery with their internal variants. These categories and variants are accepted in all levels of social life and obey a clear order in the world of these communities. They are deposited in carefully selected context from the earliest Beakers. Nothing is left to chance. Pottery makes on a special role that speaks of a change in culinary customs, new organization of tasks in domestic sites, and probably new social organization within the habitats. And that's a reorganization of identities. This form of organization becomes the norm in all settlements. In addition, new strategies of action are clearly developing in the funerary world, and an enormous variety of ritual sites are emerging in this time. We will look at examples below if I have time. The Beaker pottery tradition continues, but by restricted plain and decorated shapes, the quality improves, and the decoration are mainly grooved. They coexist with other potteries that we could call Middle Bronze Age. Once again, we have 2 types of settlements in Beaker. We have the same type of settlements like as the late Neolithic, with abundant and with a lot of material in the sites. And in north of Portugal is reduced the number of sites. Maria de Jesus speak about this the first day in conference. And the number of pieces in these walled sites is reduced, is very reduced. We have some changes. For example, the settlements changing location and moving to the mountains areas related to the humid and protected environments for livestock. In Portugal, walled sites were reused by the Beaker people, but there are indications that the walls disappeared and the settlements became smaller. And sometimes even the occupation was in the upper part of the settlements in the Acropolis. Then the question were these sites really used as habitat by Beaker people, or did they have other punctual and short uses? The number of Beakers is small and in these sites and tends to be of international styles. Castro de Palleiros, excavated by Maria de Jesus, is here, is the only exception to this rule, with more international Beaker and more variety in regional styles. And only one Cien Pozuelos is found in Tapado da Caldeira, in another site. It seems that in Galicia, the Beaker communities occupy the territory to settle and live in it in parallel to Neolithic communities, while in northern Portugal they try to appropriate a previously inhabited space, but they don't success really. No other type of habitation sites are known here. Perhaps they did not manage to establish themselves in a stateway in a territory that was better controlled by the Neolithic people, or only the Beaker people acted in a symbolic way on the Chalcolithic fortifications as a strategy to appropriate that space. We are faced with a macro-regional difference between Galicia and northern Portugal that indicate that the Neolithic tradition and identities are stronger or more resistant to the Beaker in Portugal than in Galicia. The shell impression is going to be the decorative norm in this region, and in the Beaker period, it is not only a feature of Galicia, but it can be documented in other Atlantic regions. In particular, differences can be seen between the Galician regional Beaker in a very small territory. The dating does not allow us to observe whether the sites are contemporary, but it could be suggested that there are at least two groups with different personalities that are moving in the same territory at the same time or over the time. This trend could be transferred to a slightly larger territory scale if we look at two small areas, Morrazo and Bocelo Ranch. We have observed this tendency. In addition, it can be noted that there is a greater decorative richness, variety of shelf used in the interior than on the coast. More value placed or shell in the interior because they are more difficult to obtain? I don't know. Is there a preference for a more international style on the coast? The different use of shell inland and on the coast could be showing faint differences in the development of identities. The grooved Beakers, the Epicampaniforme, appear in sites with the first longhouses in the region by the moment, and are probably a Middle Bronze Age chronology. I know it is very complicated, but is the data now. Documented in settlements and in ritual sites, not directly in burials. But really we have a few sites for this grooved Beaker. There are a few settlements in the north and northwest, and they are scarcely published. The area of Bárdenas Reales in this part, or Catalonia, can be highlighted as areas of concentration of Beaker settlements, really, but I couldn't research more information about this. Really, it was very difficult for me find information. Here we observe a key phenomenon in understanding the processes of acceptance of the Beaker region. We have two forms of burial, megalith reuse, again, and new built burial mounds with Beakers. We can make a direct interpretation of these remains in megalith reused. We can think that there is a continuity with the Neolithic using the spaces of their death. And it is exceptional, really, the small burial mounds with Beakers. And there are a regional Beaker predominance. Several questions arise here. Does this use really imply a continuity or a rupture with the Neolithic? Do communities disrespect the Neolithic because they use the space of their death? Does the reuse of these monuments always have a funerary function? An alternative answer I propose is that the aim of the Beaker communities is not to continue a tradition that they accept in order to integrate with the Neolithic communities, but on the contrary, they are appropriating a Neolithic space, in some cases through the use of a funerary rite, which is different from the Neolithic. And in other cases, through a perhaps more sporadic rite in which they use materials that they fragment and abandon. In both cases, the intention goes beyond a specific funerary rite that is related to the establishment of a new system of power. In both cases, international styles predominate, regional styles are exceptional in the tumuli, and only in one case there is a regional palmela type in the south, in Portugal, in the north of Portugal, which may showing two sides of ongoing identity process. On one hand, there's a status identity, a greater social complexity, and communitary and pan-continental identity. We have both ways of showing the identity, I think. The place where the pottery is located and its degree of preservation is important in each case to assess whether the act is funerary or not funerary and only ritual. Here we observe a key phenomenon in understanding the process of acceptance of the Beaker region. We have no, sorry, I confirm. Says where? Oh, sorry. But then, where are the true Beaker burials? The individual grave goods from these burials, smaller in size, not monumental in many cases, have not Beaker ceramics. Research has separated them from the Beaker as if it was another different and parallel phenomenon, the early Bronze Age. I suggest that it should be integrated into a same development dynamics as the international and regional Beakers. It is suggested that they are late burials associated with a regional Beakers, but the dates are scarce and in some cases older than regional Beakers. We find more diversity. The first thing to highlight is the change in the materiality of grave goods. Plain ceramics, decorated, non-Beaker ceramics, buried metallic grave goods, slab decorated with design similar to Beaker, absence of grave goods in some tombs. The second thing is that there is a combination of elements, the so-called Beaker package, that respond to a pattern that refers to the status of the buried person. The combination chosen are diverse depending on the type of burial. One's 4 combination, 6 combination, and pits 2 combination, different combination. On the north of Iberia Peninsula, the Beaker is combined with other elements more clearly than in the northwest, and there does not seem to be such an obvious separation between the Beaker and the rest of the grave goods. In the north, in addition, other elements of Beaker package are documented that do not appear in the northwest Iberia, perhaps because they are not preserved, as bone ornaments, for example, or the raw material is not frequent, like flint, for example. A new type of site are identified with Beaker ceramics. These sites do not fit as domestic or funerary, although the material activities found may resemble this. We can describe them with 5 common characteristics. These are sites where there is no direct evidence of burials or houses. Places are selected because they are significant in the memory of the communities before and after Beaker. There is evidence of intensive and short activity, and we can't interpret them as meeting centers or something like this, no? In any case, we have a lot of difficulties for interpretation because it is not a pattern, really. I don't know if the time... I cannot explain this example because I have no time, but we have another, I think it is the Stonehenge of Galicia, because it is an islet with barrows and feast, but the islet, it is a big midden, and in midden over the megalithic tombs. And we find a lot of Beakers of several periods, chronologies. I have the only example of ditch mound we have in the north of Galicia, and there are 3 fragments of the Beaker in the surface. This is a kind of example with a barrow with settlements around, and it's very complicated. I cannot explain, I'm sorry, I have no time, but we speak about this after if you want. Among the variety of objects that can be found in metal deposits, the deposit is another kind of site as well, weapons stand out, but specifically the flat copper axe found in half of places appear as an isolated find. The copper axe, on the other hand, is absent in the settlements and is exceptional in burials. Could these places be dismantled burials or ritual sites, such as the case of this example, where the axe appears in a crack of the petroglyph? If we look to the north, particularly to Asturias, we see that the flat copper axe is the materiality that allows us to think of a supralocal identity. Only one Beaker site is recorded in the region in the Galician regional style, the Aramo, you know. In Cantabria, we once again find different contexts with metals, a total of 84 pieces in the province, but only one site with incised Beaker, maybe Cienpozuelos style, is documented. And of course, I have to speak a little of this. Sorry. In both Asturias and Cantabria, the metal takes on the main identity role as the local status and supralocal scale, and the ceramics have a secondary role. Is this tendency the result of a rejection of Beaker by the communities that live in region, or is it just resistance for not accepting the identity implication represented by ceramic? It is difficult to answer this question because little is known about the settlements of Neolithic communities in this region. There are hardly any ceramic records associated with this context. In the Northwest, a local development of an iconography related to status identity is traced. The places with iconography that recalls the human figure, the compositions are varied, but the figure is always accompanied by the geometric decoration that very similar to Beaker, a dagger and a halberd. The engraving in the rock art stand out following the traditional of rock art in the region, which makes them more accessible than those stelae incorporated into tombs that can be reused. We have this kind of sites, really. Throughout the north, two styles of anthropomorphic stelae are developed, engraved in rock art with geometric motifs and with anthropomorphic shapes. In Catalonia and Navarra, two types are combined, while in the rest of region, the first one predominates. The anthropomorphic stelae are more schematic than those found in the rest of Europe, but maintain the identity essence that allows them to be recognized by any inhabitants who can see them. Perhaps for this reason, they are reused as part of process known to prehistoric societies. They are part of communication networks established on the continent and that not only guide the path over long distance, but also strengthen the idea of identity for a status point of view. These types of elements could be indicating that perhaps it is not so important to have Beaker pottery, but rather to follow the paths of imposed social complexity, in that there is no turning back. Over time, new discoveries that have not yet been identified with will surely come to light and will possibly fill in the empty gaps that currently exist on the map. And finally, I finish. The information available is not homogeneous either in each region or between regions, but some important issues can be glimpsed in different identities. Identities are not shown in a univocal way. They are always multi-meaningful and really show that context is key to their understanding and expression. Status seems to be very present in materiality, like other levels of identity expression. We advance 4 aspects related to identity. It may be interesting. If we can measure the impact based on quantity of Beaker finds, the number of sites, for example, or pieces, we can affirm that Galicia and Catalonia have a greater quantity. The impact could be greater in these 2 areas. Intermediate areas suffer less impact, but if we introduce the Beaker package, this will change since a certain amount of metal deposit and the same types are observed through the region. Conflict is inevitable among human communities. I think it is clearly reflected in the reuse of mounds and walled places, even in some ritual sites. Rejection really is not explicitly using the Beaker pottery, may be a form of rejection, but a bit fictitious because the rest of package is used and is present. And acceptance, the long duration of use of these materials shows that the societies of the middle of the 3rd millennium BC and 2nd millennium BC have changed by walking along similar paths. The use of a pot or a dagger can be a local or regional social option, but as a whole, the Beaker norm is respected. Fine, the Beaker identity, I think, seems inevitable, and it is in everywhere. I finished, and thank you for your patience with my English.